Right now, on Tackle Warehouse, the most expensive swim bait you can possibly buy, by far, is the Roman Made Mother. $440. $440. I don't know why this bait is $440. There could totally be a reason, you know? They're from Japan. They get imported. There could be something really special about the way that they're made that justifies that, but let's get to the point of the video. I'm going to try to make one of these, and no, I don't sell these, and I don't sell baits, period. I'm just going to try to make one of these for personal use. And this is likely not the way that they're made. I don't even know what wood they use. I know very little about this bait. I know what kind of hardware they use and how they put the bait together. And you can see the shape and the thickness and everything. Just gonna try to make something comparable. Try to match it as best I can. Maybe try to do it better, make a better bait. Okay, I'll stop. So I thought about it. The easiest way to do something like this, I'm thinking, will be just get a picture, which I did. I blew it up to the length that a mother will be. Print it out, stick it on a piece of wood and cut it out. That gives you a perfect side profile that you need to cut out. That makes it pretty easy. This is actually a little bit smaller in length than an actual mother is, but after I cut the joint, I'm thinking it's gonna give me another ½ inch probably of length, and then it'll be exactly the length of a mother. And this is 2 pieces of 3/4 inch poplar glued together. It's going to give me a perfect center line, and 1.5 inches I think is the thickness of this bait. Just from pictures, I'm kind of guessing that's the thickness of this bait. That's a big bait. So there is the shape that I'm going with. Right there where that little notch is, that's where the joint's going to be. So now both sides are perpendicular still. It'll be easier to cut the joint at a good angle while the bait's still like this. So this is just a simple jig. It's just a piece of wood cut at an angle. This is 22 degrees. And this is the angle that the joint will be on the front piece. It's a different angle on the back piece, it's thinner. But we'll have to adjust that later. This is the offcut of this piece that was cut at an angle. And I just use it to squish the blade into place. So I didn't cut all the way through because this bait's going to be easier to carve if it's all just one piece. Now I'm just looking at pictures on my laptop and I'm just going to draw out the profile on the top. There's some decent pictures online of how this looks. I think that's a good line. I'm gonna use some tracing paper, copy this and transfer it over to this side. There, I got a top profile. Not bad. I'm gonna go cut this out. So I realized that before I cut out this top profile, I should cut out the slot that the tail fin is gonna go into. I'm making this slot 1/8 of an inch thick. I think on the real Roman Made Mothers it's a little thinner, but the material that I'm gonna be using to make the tail fin is gonna be 1/8 inch thick. Thick, thick, thick. Thick. So on the front end there is a flat section of this right where the head is, and then it comes to a curve. But on the back end it's kind of concave, just barely. You can't get away with just trying to sand this flat. So I'm using this edge and kind of sanding away at it really slowly. There, got the shape blocked out. I'm pretty happy with that. So from what I've seen, the top is definitely wider than the bottom. I drew out some lines on this bait to kind of get that effect. To rough carve this out, I'm going to try to stay away from this section, but I'm going to round off the top, and this center line is my high point, and then on the side this line is my high point. I'm just going to carve a round section like that, and then from this line on the bottom to this center line that's just a lateral line down the bait, I'm going to carve off all that flat, no radius at all. I think after I do that I'll have a really good feel of how this bait's really going to be. This carving, it is pretty specific. Like, I'm not even close to being done, but I can tell there's going to be a lot of, well, just as you're carving, there's a lot of different turns and lines that it takes. Had to look at a picture of the nose of this bait. It's flat on the bottom, and it does take the same chamfers as the top here, like that. I wonder if everything about this bait has been consistent over the years, like if there's been any changes made to it, or it's been made and produced for quite a while. It'd be interesting to know what's changed and what the reasons are and stuff. So, I've done enough damage with the chisel. I'm gonna go to the sander and get this profile perfect. There's quite a bit of material still to take off, but I don't know, I don't usually feel like it's the best course of action is just to sand it all off. Usually I like to bring the chisel to it, but I don't know, this big bait, it has like nice sweeping curves and everything. I think the sander is gonna do a good job. So after a whole bunch of sanding, I think I'm getting close. This would be a lot easier if I've seen one of these in person. I could really know the feel of them, but that's looking pretty good. Pretty similar. I'm probably going to sand more and more. Just can't sand it till it's gone, but when I'm done sanding, I'm going to cut that joint the rest of the way. Okay, time to get this bait cut in half. Felt like I was putting dents in the bait from my dirty bench top. There, pretty clean joint. Gonna be able to sand everything, so it's absolutely perfect. This front half, that's the angle that the joint needs to be, but on the rear half, it's gonna need to be more narrow. That's the way they are on these baits. I think it's like that so there's more room for this kind of action to happen, you know? I don't know if it like lets more water get in the joint too, and I don't know. It's that way on this bait. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna sand these further back and keep this point up here. More sanding. You can kind of tell that the angle on the rear joint or the rear piece is not the same as the front. I think I'm going to take that back even more though. There, that's a lot better. That's a lot closer to what it really is. It's time to start carving. I got to make the gills and the mouth and the eye look like that. I've got all of the lines drawn and the eye sockets drilled out for this bait. Now it's just a matter of scoring all these lines and carving how Roman Made carves. I've noticed that they do it in a way where all the carvings are just straight into the bait. And they're very precise with the offcut and where the chamfer comes off. They make that look really clean. So it's like the side of the bait and then a sharp cut in and then it comes back out. And where it goes in and out, those are super clean lines. So I kind of have to mimic that. This is a strange way for me to carve because I'm really used to taking this little edge on the outside, chamfering that off too, and just smoothing it out. But on this bait, I just have to leave it. It's kind of satisfying when you get it right though, when you get it really straight. So that's the really rough carving so far. I'll get back to you guys when I'm a bit further with this. You know how in Japanese furniture, sometimes you'll see that they hide joinery and they just make things look more simple than they really are. That kind of might be what they're doing here with this bait and the way it's carved, because this is not easier to do, to carve like this. On their baits, it looks like it's just one pass, super clean, super straight, along with the curves and everything. I mean, obviously it's not. Obviously it's multiple passes and they go back and make it look really clean. But we're getting there. It's looking like a Roman Made. Resembles it somewhat, you know. I've marked out and scored every hole that I gotta drill into this bait. So there's all of the spots that the weight holes are gonna be, and I labeled how big the holes need to be too. Those are all just my guesses from this size bait. I'm thinking I'll be able to work with those. So I'm gonna start out with the 3/4 inch holes. I'm gonna have to fix that. It's okay, it's a simple fix. And to fix it, I'm just gonna use baking soda and super glue. I'm just gonna layer it up where I need it and then carve it back down. There's the patch. Now I'm just going to sand that down. I think you guys can see that. Patch was right there. Just sanded it all flat until it was smooth to the touch. You can't feel a difference. Then you know it's flat. Okay, back to drilling. There are all of the lead holes. So I think this is a good point to seal the wood on this bait. I'm not entirely done carving, but I still want to seal the wood right now. Once all the wood's kind of stabilized with the sealer, I'll be able to sand it down. And on all of the carvings, I'll just sand everything to where it needs to be. So now I need to move on to making this tail fin. I've got this 1/8 inch thick piece of poplar, and I'm going to stencil that onto that. Ta-da! There's the tail. Just have to carve the grooves into it now. They're just straight lines on this tail. So I just scored those lines, and I'm going to come in from each side and carve off material to the lines. That'll give these marks some thickness. Thick. I really like how Roman Made does their tails. They look really clean. I got the tail fin all nice and carved, sanded out too. I'm happy with it, so I'm gonna start sealing it and giving it a nice smooth finish. I was supposed to get a smaller one of these. Those loops are too big. I want to make these loops as small as possible because they're going to be what's between the joint, and the bigger that these loops are, the wider apart the joint will be. So got to keep these small. There, that's perfect. There, that is all of the hardware for this bait. And I needed to make this hardware before I put the lead in this bait because I have to weigh it and balance it with this stuff in it. And I'm also going to need to finish the tail before I can even weigh this bait, because the tail is going to be on the finished product too, and I have to balance it with the urethane casting rubber that I'm going to use to make this tail. This stuff. Alumilite Flex 70 is what it's called. Should work good. But here it is with the hardware in it. It's got the joints in there. I don't have it glued together, but it's got the hardware for the joint. That's about how far apart it'll be. So I've got a base for this mold box, and that's glued to that little piece, which is glued to the tail fin. And all I got to do is put this mold box over it and pour some silicone. See, in 12 hours. I forgot to turn the camera on, but I unmolded the mold for the tail fin. It's gonna work out fine. So now I've got a flexible rubber urethane tail. Took it out of the mold. That'll work. Right here is all of the hardware, the hooks, the line tie and hook hangers, and the joint connections and the tail that I'm gonna need to have on this bait when I weigh it. But it's ready to go now. I can go weigh it. So I just kind of tacked in all the hardware with some low strength spray adhesive. That way I can take this back out after I'm done weighing it, but I'll be able to hang the hooks off of these at the same time too, and have the tail stay in there securely. But yeah, this is probably the most important and tricky and need to get right part of the build. Otherwise it just won't swim good. It's got to sink slow. It's got to be, it's got to fall perpendicular with the surface of the water. Yeah, this has to be done right. My technique is going to be pour the lead in the bait. I'm thinking I'm gonna mostly fill up these holes. See how it sinks. It's probably gonna sink pretty fast. And then determine from there how much lead I need to drill out with the drill press in order for it to sink correctly. I'm filling in the holes on opposite ends first, and then from there slowly fill in the big ones in the belly. It's better to distribute the weight as far as you can away from the center of these baits, in my opinion. It frees up a lot of motion in the joint because there's less inertia and weight close to the joint. Makes it lighter and more able to move, I think. That's not proven, that's just what I think. I think the real mothers are like 11 ounces, something close to that, 12. It'll be interesting to see if I get it close. This feels heavy. I kind of just want to see if it sinks already. Might as well take my time, see where I'm at. Well, it sits upright already. It's not really close to sinking though. Of course I didn't put the hooks on. Well, it's kind of close to sinking. It doesn't need that much more. Maybe another ounce. So just, this isn't really a pro tip, this is just a tip from experience. Do not try to pour lead into a bait where the hole is wet, because if a drop of lead hit that, it would explode. And I've done that before, and it's kind of scary. But yeah, just make sure you get the insides of the holes nice and dried out. You're back in action. I'm kind of filling the rest of the holes up about a little less than halfway. I think that'll be more than enough, and then I'll be able to drill out whatever I need from there. Okay. Got to make sure if there's any spaces where air can be trapped, you let the air out first before you see if it sinks. And that is super close to sinking. The material I'm going to use to fill these holes is a little buoyant. It's going to float a little bit, so this is going to need some more lead to sink correctly when the bait's done. What I'm going for is just it sits flush on the bottom and it's just resting on the hooks. So I'm just going to put a little bit more lead in that hole. Probably like 4 drops, 4 or 5. That should do it. Lost a hook. There. That's perfect. It'll sink slow and just rest on the hooks. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to fill these holes with some epoxy resin mixed with just a little bit of microspheres, and that'll make it just slightly buoyant, pretty much the same specific gravity as water. And after that, I need to paint and clear coat the bait, which is going to add a material to this bait that has a higher specific gravity than water, so it's going to want to sink. The clear coat the clear coat sinks, is what I'm trying to say. Those two things should kind of counteract each other, and I'm left with how this bait sinks right now. I think this is sanded smooth enough. It's looking good. There's all the covered up lead holes. I like it when a bait gets to this point because it just became more than just a piece of wood that's carved like a lure. It's got the weight in it and it can function like a lure now. It's kind of cool. I'm going to take these pilot holes that I have drilled out for the hardware and I'm just going to inject them full of super glue and then twist these hook hangers and line ties into them. When you do this right, it's actually a super secure way of putting hardware on a bait, because that is a ton of surface area, all those twists and notches to get super glue into and have it adhere to a piece of wood. I mean, once this is set up, there's no taking pliers and ripping that out. The wire will break first. It's been my experience. You can see it's kind of translucent where I patched it right there. That's kind of cool. So I've started spraying this bait with a base coat of white. Before this, I was building up some polyurethane coats with the sprayer, trying to get this bait as smooth as possible. With the sides so smooth and flat, I I felt like I needed to do that. All the imperfections in the wood and the wood grain can kind of really be seen if you don't do that. You can still see a little bit of wood grain in this bait, but looks pretty flat. Good enough for me. Just sprayed a little bit of gold on the top flank of this bait. And now over that, I'm gonna put some iridescent green. I think as I get this bait painted, you guys will see what paint scheme it'll be. It's kind of a classic Roman Made paint scheme I'm going for. That one with the red stripe down the side. That one. Molded a red tail for it just now too, so it'll look just like it. Alright, this bait's got some silver scales on it, so I'm gonna get that done. There, that looks pretty good. This next part, it's gonna make or break this paint scheme. I'm gonna give it its red stripe. It starts way back here, comes all the way up to here, and it's gotta be crispy and done nicely, or it's gonna look like crap. I want it to be centered. The point comes up to the top here, but this thing needs to be centered. I'm gonna go with, I think I know what I'm doing now. That was opaque red. Pretty good. I'm not gonna complain, that looks pretty good. Very red. So it's gotta be like that. But this part comes down and I need to avoid overspray on this part. Yeah, I want it just like that. I think to avoid overspray on the joint, I'm just gonna kind of stay away from it. Lines up, looks good. I'm happy. Just have to do it on the other side now. Done painting. Just got to glue the eyes on, give it a clear coat, and it's done. So I'm doing something a little different with this bait's eyes than what a normal Roman Made Mother would be. I'm going to put some glass eyes on it. A little different. I always thought this bait would look cool with red eyes too. Time to clear coat. I don't have very much clear coat left. Hopefully it's enough. It looks like a bait that would need like 15 grams. I think I have enough. A little bit of denatured alcohol. Keeps it thin. On Roman Made baits, they don't have the brush on epoxy clear coats like this. But I'm kind of wanting this bait to last me a long time. So I'm doing an epoxy clear coat. So I'm going to clear coat the bait. And then when the clear coat's done, that's when I'm going to add the hardware for the joint and connect the two halves and then install the tail. Definitely it would be easiest that way when you're doing a brush on epoxy clear coat like this. Beautiful. That is a very heavy piece to be on the rotisserie all alone. Puts it really off balance. I think that piece alone weighs like 6 or 7 ounces, almost half a pound. Looks good. Got the tail glued in. For jobs like these, it's good to use the gel super glue. I'll cover the threads, and then I'll cover the insides of the holes too, and then glue it in. Give that a while to dry now. It's done. One thing left to do? Well, two things left to do. Go see if it swims good and catch a fish. This probably won't be an easy bait to catch a fish on. I'm gonna give it a while though. I'm gonna cast it a lot. I'll try to remain persistent and catch a fish. We'll see. This bait swims good. It ended up having a really nice action. I've seen video of the real Roman Made Mothers, and this is pretty comparable. Yeah, I've never fished with a real one before, but I bet this is pretty similar. This ended up being 10.2 ounces. The real ones are 10.5, so this is just a little bit lighter. It has a really slow sink. I'm gonna enjoy this bait. I didn't catch anything on that outing. I only fished for probably like 3 hours. So, I don't know. Maybe by the end of the year, before winter, maybe I'll be able to get something on this bait. That'd be really cool. I should make that a goal. Yeah, this was a fun bait. On to the next bait. Thick.